Hi, I'm Chauncey Hay. I teach adjunct at BGSU and at Adrian College in the art departments, and I also do lithography. So in lithography, it's kind of different than other things like relief or etching because we're using usually a stone or an aluminum plate of some sort where we are putting a greasy substance onto the surface that's porous or grease accepting and creating a relationship between that and a water-based substance. So when you apply the greasy substance to particularly a stone, you create a reaction on the surface, and it's actually changing the chemistry of the stone to be something that is grease accepting permanently or until you go and remove that surface layer later on. And this greasy substance can be anything from a grease pencil to a grease crayon to I've seen people use cigarette smoke before. Anything that has a grease compound in it, you can actually etch it onto the stone or get it to adhere to the stone and print it later. You can't just draw directly on limestone though, you have to prepare the stone. So usually people will get a flattened piece of limestone and they will do something called grain it, which they use a series of different grits of a metal compound called carborundum, which is like a sandpaper sort of material, and you grain it with either something called a levigator, which is a great name, or another stone, and you basically add texture to the surface to have something that will be more porous and accepting of grease. Once the stone is grained, you can fan it dry, and then it's ready to be drawn on. So you can use any material. Usually people use grease pencils, like I said, though, and they will draw onto it, draw their image, and then from there, they need to process it and go to the etching. The etching is different than that of something in intaglio, where you're using a copper plate. You're actually just affixing a gum stencil around your grease area, and it will keep that grease area stable and ready to print each time. So you go in with a gum Arabic solution that is acidified in some way, and you will go over the surface with it for a few minutes, and then buff it in tightly with some cheesecloth. And you'll do this process 2 or 3 times depending on how stable or how long you need to run your edition or your amount of prints. So if you have a very stable image on a stone or a plate, you can actually print for thousands of prints if that is what you're required to do for that job, and it will still hold up after those 1,000 prints. Traditionally, when you roll up a stone, you use a black ink that's pretty stiff but still loose enough that it can roll up evenly on the stone. It's usually a mixture of something called crayon black and roll-up black, and it makes a stiff kind of compound. Usually the roller in lithography is a leather roller that is kept coated in ink for its lifetime, and it's just used as the roll-up and or printing roller for that type of ink. So whether it be roll-up ink or shop mix ink, you're using that to roll up your image. The benefit of a leather roller is that it has this nap to it, so it actually holds ink a lot more consistently, and it doesn't over-ink your image as easily as something such as a normal rubber-based roller. To print the stone in litho, we use a different press. Usually you're using a drum-based roller where there's a giant drum in the center of the roller that goes and applies pressure to the plate. In lithography, it's actually like a squeegee where you have an arm that you pull down and applies pressure to a plastic layer that sits on top of your stone called a tin-pin. It drags the pressure over the surface to get more downward pressure and to have more contact with the actual stone. This is actually the first time in 3 years we've been able to offer lithography, and it's been great to see students using the equipment and the stones and everything again and see them have a general interest in the process.